It was a huge year for the birds. It was a terrible year for the berries. For them and a certain company called Netflix, this was a year worth forgetting. Take a look.
Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating story of Angry Birds. We will explore how Rovio managed to create and then destroy what many consider the best iOS game of all time. This is a story about the excessive desire for money, a desire so profound that it has led to the end of the legendary game. As the Bible says, whoever loves money never has enough. By the way, subscribe to my channel, it's free. Discover how Rovio attempted to save the situation, but a single poor decision ultimately resulted in even greater failure, transforming its loyal fans into haters. Sit back, relax, and let's get started.
That's what we do. We connect with the fans, so it's all about fans, less about features.
Understood. Okay, show me the game.
Our story begins in snowy Finland. Back in 2003, Rovio Entertainment, then called Reload, was just a small mobile studio with big dreams. At the beginning, they developed games for Nokia. But in the early 2000s, not a lot of people had a smartphone, so the distribution of their games were highly limited. For years, they created modest games that barely made a blip on the radar. However, everything has changed in 2008, when Apple launched the App Store, a revolutionary way to sell apps and games on mobile devices. In 2009, when the company faced severe financial difficulties, Rovio's team started brainstorming ideas to invent a new game that could save the company. The budget was very limited. Rovio's team had only $25,000 for the project. In the early days of mobile gaming, companies attempted to adapt PC games for smartphones, but this approach proved unsuccessful. Rovio, on the other hand, recognized the need for a simple and addictive game that people could play for 10 to 15 minutes daily during commutes to their homes or offices. The inspiration came from the game called Crush the Castle. In this game, you have to destroy the king's castles with a crossbow. Inspired by this game, Rovio team introduced angry-looking birds and replaced the castle with wood, brick and glass structures. They also added some amusing-looking green pigs. In 2009, swine flu pandemic was a hot topic. That's why developers choose to add pigs as enemies. This is how the concept for Angry Birds game was born. After 8 months of development and nearly going bankrupt, Rovio released Angry Birds on iOS in December 2009. Little did they know, they just launched a global phenomenon. The game had a very simple yet addictive gameplay, where players had to launch birds as structures to defeat green pigs. By 2010, Angry Birds had gained significant popularity, becoming the #1 paid app in the App Store. The game's popularity exploded between 2011 and 2013. By 2012, Angry Birds had been downloaded for over 1 billion times across all platforms. Angry Birds wasn't just a game, it has become a cultural icon. Rovio's revenue skyrocketed from 6.5 million in 2010 to 152 million in 2012. The franchise expanded beyond mobile games, including merchandise, animated series, toys, and even a theme park in Finland. Rovio also announced the Angry Birds movie, the movie that will ultimately lead to its downfall. At that time, it seemed like the Angry Birds empire would never stop growing. Rovio started to make more and more Angry Birds iterations, like for example, Angry Birds Seasons, Angry Birds Rio, Angry Birds Space, Angry Birds Star Wars, one of the most successful Angry Birds editions, by the way. The business model back in the day was pretty simple. Users had a choice between a paid version of the game, priced at $1, or a free game, also called Lite version. The free-to-play model was born, giving people the ability to test the game for free and then decide if they want to buy a full version. Nothing problematic at this point. In 2013, Rovio reported 263 million monthly active users across all its games. This period marked the peak of Angry Birds' cultural impact and Rovio's financial success. The total value of Rovio company at that time was over $8 billion. As the saying goes, what goes up must come down, and for Angry Birds, the descent began with two words: in-app purchases. Initially, Angry Birds was a paid app with a one-time cost. You bought it, you own it. Simple. But as the mobile gaming market evolved, Rovio shifted to a freemium model. The base game became free, but players were constantly asked to buy power-ups, special birds, and other in-game items. This change didn't set well with many fans. The pure skill-based gameplay that made Angry Birds so addictive was now replaced by play-to-win element. Players felt the game was becoming less about strategy and more about who could spend the most money. As we entered the mid-2010s, the love between players and Angry Birds began to fade away. People started to turn against Rovio and their once beloved game. The reasons for that are multiple. There were simply too many Angry Birds games and products. What was once charming became annoying. The repetitive mechanics simply became boring. The constant push for in-app purchases felt greedy and ruined the gameplay experience for many players. Every new release of Angry Birds felt more like reskin than genuinely new experience. The competition also began to grow as new, innovative games entered the market, making Angry Birds a bit obsolete and boring. Rovio's attempts to diversify, including an animated series and movies, couldn't save the sinking ship. By 2015, they were forced to lay off a significant portion of their workforce. The Angry Birds, once the dominant force of the App Store, began to lose players for the first time in its history. In mid-2010s, Rovio launched a new concept, Angry Birds Go, a racing game with even more in-app transactions. Angry Birds Go was a mix between Mario Kart but with birds, obviously. This game was totally free, but this time without a paid version. Although Angry Birds Go was a great game, people began to criticize Rovio for prioritizing business and money over the user experience and gaming, reducing Angry Birds to a pure cash machine. But this is nothing compared to Angry Birds 2, a new iteration of its classic game. This game was truly disgusting, widely regarded as the first wallet vacuum game. The game was released as a free download, unlike the original game, which cost 99 cents. This initially seemed like a good deal for players, but it turned out to be a nightmare. In Angry Birds 2, players had a limited number of lives per day, but they could easily purchase more lives to continue playing immediately. Various boosters could help to pass difficult levels, making the game less about skills and strategy and more about the money. The game frequently offered special deals or reminded players about available purchases. The game used various malicious psychological tricks to encourage spending, such as limited time offers and fear of missing out. Unlike the original game's clear one-time fee, it was easy for players to lose track of how much they were spending over time, especially for kids. Parents were concerned about children making unauthorized purchases.
Since it debuted on the iPhone 2 years ago, Angry Birds has become more than just a popular game. It's now on its way to becoming a global brand. When Rovio, the Finnish computer game developer, started selling Angry Birds merchandise last year, it expected maybe a few thousand buyers. That was a bit off.
These are the toys that we started making, and we sold 2 million of these plush toys, so that's been kind of like really phenomenal.
In 2016, the Angry Birds movie was finally released, and Rovio capitalized on this opportunity to make a lot of money. However, they began releasing a series of low-quality games, sometimes even copying successful projects like Candy Crush. Rovio then created its own version of Candy Crush, but this time with Angry Birds, obviously. These weren't even games, they were pure cash cows. Despite all, the Angry Birds movie was a huge success, so Rovio could reinvest the money in other new projects. But boy, they have made a choice to go in a different direction, make more and more money. As the Bible says, whoever loves money never has enough. By the way, subscribe to my channel, it's free. You see, At that time, in 2016, users could still purchase original Angry Birds games without in-app purchases. Naturally, smart people preferred to pay once and own the game forever, avoiding the in-app transactions. Rovio decided to make a very dangerous move. They simply removed the original Angry Birds series from the App Store. All games released between 2009 and 2014 randomly disappeared from the App Store, leaving players only with freemium versions of its games. People who once loved Angry Birds gradually turned against the game, resulting in a significant decline in downloads. Rovio started losing money and its huge fan base. There is nothing worse for a company than a group of fans who feel betrayed and used. After that, Rovio tried to save the situation, but it was already too late. In 2022, the company re-released the original Angry Birds game for $1, offering a classic one-time purchase model. So many people began buying this game that it led to a decline in in-app purchases for other Rovio's games. And guess what Rovio did to save the situation? They once again removed the game from the App Store. The rise and fall of Angry Birds serves as a valuable lesson for the mobile gaming industry. It illustrates how even the most cherished game can experience a decline when developers prioritize financial gains over the well-being of their players. In 2009, Rovio crafted a truly remarkable game. However, in their relentless pursuit of overexpanding profits, they neglected the very essence that made Angry Birds so unique and special in the first place. Thanks for watching. Peace.